Hello, welcome to the Adeptus Custodes Tactics video. My name is Aaron, I'm your host, and I'm from Black Crow Gaming. And this week, we're going to be looking at the Adeptus Custodes best and worst matchups. And I've taken all of this statistics from statchecker.com, and you can go on there and you can look at your own stats, how well you're playing in certain factions, how well you're playing to other factions. It's pretty cool. It's a pretty cool tool, and it's my friend Sam, who does the World Eaters stuff. He was like, I asked him if he could get this all for me, and he obliged. But before we do any of this, I need to do a big favour, and I need you to hit those magical YouTube buttons. If you like what you see, please hit the like button. If you want to subscribe, that's even better. And if you hit that bell notification, you hear everything that we've got going on, and you won't miss any of these wonderful episodes that we're putting out. And we've got more content planned, more coming in the future, and we're like super excited to do all of these things. We also have two wonderful sponsors. We're sponsored by the guys at Glasshammer, and if you put in Black Crow into the coupon part of your purchase, your basket area, you get an additional 5% off. That works for their events, it works for all of their models, and you know what? It's worth it. Who doesn't like to save some money? They already do 15 to 20% off. Whack it up to 20-25. Do us a favour. Do it. You know you want to. The next one we've got is Terrain Forge. They do all of our wonderful terrain that you see on our battle reports. They are a fantastic company. They have recently released this sheet of measuring devices that you can get, and he can put your gaming or your club icons on everything that he prints for you and does. If you put in BCG on his website, you get an additional 5% off. That's right, an additional 5% off. We'll just give him 5% off everywhere. Anyway, let's get into it, and I'm just going to get up the PowerPoint. So, Adeptus Custodes, right? They're an interesting. We're in an interesting bunch. So, if you've been keeping up with the Meta Monday article, we've been steadily going down in the meta. I think that's just because of the way the meta has gone in general. But actually, when I looked at what was our best and some of our worst matchups, according to statistics, I was a bit shocked. So I felt like I needed to add this slide in. And I've got to kind of highlight how I'm going to be looking at these figures. So this is all based on GTs since the Pariah Nexus has dropped. No single day events are single day events not included, and the reason they weren't included is simply because you get more data from GTs. And if you're going 5-0, then with Adeptus Custodes you're doing good jobs. And this Meta Monday just gone, I will just say isn't including the stats that have just happened. This is from last week from recording this. So we are slightly out of date and there might be slight percentile differences, but currently, these are about as accurate as we can get. So over the course of a GT, there's always, with all of these percentages, going to be an element of player skill. So you'll see one of our best matchups recently just went and smashed a huge GT. Now, folks, when I talk about element of player skill, if you were playing, I think the world number one is Carl Grundy at the minute. If you played Carl Grundy and his Tau, and say we had a 55% win rate into that faction, we don't, by the way, but say we did, that would definitely fluctuate if you're playing into Carl Grundy. But equally, you could be the best custody player in the world, and those stats will change based on your ability, based on what they can do, and who you're going to play at the tabletop. This will always be based on whether the list is competitive or not as well. These are based on tournaments, competitive ranked tournaments. So some of these stats can obviously change based on if people are bringing the most optimized stuff. If you're going into lists and you play 1,000 player and they've not brought the most optimized stuff, you might win against them more often than not in your local community. However, in an optimized list of some of these top players, it's pretty bleak for us. I'm not going to lie to you, folks. Pretty bleak. These figures do not guarantee your results. just because you have seen the results that I have found through Stat Checker does not mean that when you go into these games, you are going to achieve the same results. There is still an element of it's not going to go your way. And the dice gods are part of that. Player skill is a part of that. Terrain is a part of that. Christ, the weather is a part of that. But these stats exist, and these exist to help guide us on the performance of a faction overall. And let's have a look at overall how we're doing. So into our worst matchups, and there's a few. So I included in our worst matchups anything where we have a negative win percentage and what that is. So against Drakari, for example, we win 35% of the time. So that's pretty low. And I think the reason that is Drakari are extremely cheap. They've had some great buffs, and their Haywire is fantastic at dealing with any sort of mechanized power we may bring. But just in general, their equipment is just really good at hurting us. They've got access to fight first. Yes, when you get into their lines, they fall, and they fall hard. But as this win percentage suggests, when we're playing into Drakari currently, it's pretty bleak. It is bleak. The next one along that line is Thousand Suns, and they beat us 61% of the time. We have a 39% win ratio into them, and I can believe it. The amount of dev wounds they put in, not even Talons of the Emperor can save you from that. And, I experienced this just literally a couple of days ago with Magnus doing 15 dev to me. And that is literally a unit of Adeptus Custodes just gone. And if you do not have the Feel No Pain availability from like the 1 CP from Shield Host or from Talons, that you're going to feel that, folks. And their whole army just does dev. And it's Doombolt. Doombolt is just ridiculous. Shouldn't be a thing. I could go on about Thousand Suns all day because I find them really difficult to play into myself. And I've played some of the best Thousand Sun players in the UK at tabletop, at a tournament, and it was tough, really tough. This next one actually surprised me, and that was Grey Knights. And the reason it surprised me, because when you get into Grey Knights with Adeptus Custodes, they fall pretty hard. But I think the main reason we struggle into them so much is their mobility. The fact that they can be picked up and put down, the Dread Knights ignoring our cover and going straight to our invulnerable saves. It's very much a battle of our 4-ups, and their weapons do 3 damage a pop. Again, Dead Custodian. That is a problem, folks. But we can deal with that, and that is fine. It's not the end of the world. But again, that win percentage isn't great. Our next one, we lose 60% of the time to Demons. Demons beat us. We win 40% of the time against Demons. And again, Demons had a very nice buff. They've done really, really well. And you can see that with players like the True Demon Lord. Shout out True Demon Lord. Go check out his YouTube. Great chap. He is, probably one of the reasons why Adeptus Custodes perform really poorly against Demons. But Demons, their Monster Mash, Shalaxi is really resilient. Those Great Unclean ones, super tough to move. They've got the minusing abilities to hit or to OC. I can't remember what it is exactly, but they're really tough. Apparently, we're still also going on to the next one, struggling into Eldar. I personally have not lost to Eldar this edition. But again, this is based on player skill, folks. Player skill. But I think optimized Eldari builds, they're still beating us. Again, it's that dev wound output is still something that really hurts Adeptus Custodes. Anybody with fights first, that's also a problem for us. We're going into CSM, and it's a similar percentage, 41% for Eldari. I can see why into CSM these are our problems, and how do we counter that? Well, again, it all very much depends on our builds and what the player list is. So I can't turn around and say, this is how you 100% beat this army. But when you come up to the tabletop and you see some of the things that they'll bring, these Vindicators, that Josh Roberts list that was knocking about, where he had the Rubric Marines and the amount of damage they were putting out. The Rubric Marines were better in CSM than they were for Thousand Suns, and this would cause a host of problems for Adeptus Custodes. Our units are so small, they're so valuable that every loss we feel, and that's a problem. That's a real problem for us. The next one I was surprised by. We lose into Votann 58% of the time. We only win 42% of the time. I personally thought we'd have a better matchup into Votann, but apparently they do very well into us. And I wonder if that's just because of the amount of shooting, that they've got that ability where if you shoot them, they can just shoot us back. Those Sagittars can really push the line, and they do an awful lot of damage to us. And it's again that increases that they have to themselves with the judgment tokens. I think that's probably what weighs it in against us. But Adeptus Custodes vehicles, their tanks, are very good at picking up Votann vehicles. Very good. So a Votann player basically needs to pick up our tanks ASAP. If not, they're going to have a bad day. Sorry, guys. But again, situational. Now, Necrons I thought would be higher on the list. Necrons have been really high in the rankings of the meta for a long time. They've got just a really good book, really strong, and now someone's knocking about with this triple Catan list. Quadruple Catans, quadruple Transcendence. Some of them are getting wild. I personally don't like to build my list that way, but then I'm very much more of a fair weather Necron player, and I think, when they had the Canoptic Court, when that was really difficult for everybody to deal with because they were so resilient, so sturdy. But I do say that when Custodes do get into Necrons, they can really put the punishment on them. And I don't think Catans are amazing in the Custodes. Yes, any minus reduction to our damage is a problem, folks. Any minus reduction to our damage. And this is probably where it's coming from. But if you get into them, weight of attacks can do the biz. So a 43% of the time we win against Necrons. So that's pretty low. So I get it. Blood Angels, we've got a 45% win rate into Blood Angels. Blood Angels are very much top of the meta at the minute. And I think this is quite situational. Again, there's probably going to be a lot of Blood Angel players out there, and they're not all going to be of the same caliber. So this is why I think that this is slightly lower on the worst matchup board, and probably naturally could be a bit higher. Going into Tau, we've got a 46% win rate. So I can see that. So look, Tau don't like combat, and Custodes are very good at getting into combat very quickly. And when they do get into combat, Tau just fall down. But then again, Tau have got guns that can do an awful lot of damage. They're very good at that. Stripping our cover, ignoring our cover is a problem for us. They've got a lot of dice, and anything that ignores our cover and pushes us onto a vulnerable saves, we're at a 50-50 chance if that Custodian is going to live, and they've got a lot of high damage weapons. So I think that's where this comes from. And this probably also comes from the Imperial Guard win percentage. 53% of the time we lose to Imperial Guard, and that is probably simply because their tanks are very durable and they put out a lot of hurt, and those Rogal Dawns are no joke when they go into a Custodian and they pop off. That's again a problem. There's a lot of armies out there at the minute which are just very good into Adeptus Custodes, which is why our win rate is quite low. It's why when the latest meta Monday, we were topping in at 42%. Now, this will fluctuate, and other people will have different statistics depending on what where they're taking it from. But at the moment in time, this probably isn't in the golden part for Games Workshop, and they were probably hoping for this to be slightly better. Tyranids, I was a bit surprised by. So yes, Tyranids got some love in the latest rules drop. They got made stronger, they got made better, they're probably a bit cheaper, but I personally have never lost a game against Tyranids. Again, it's one of those where I think Adeptus Custodes just put out more damage in combat than Tyranids, and we can hurt them. I think there's, Adeptus Custodes players can go into a Tyranid army relatively confident, and I think this percentage is literally driven from, again, this fluctuation in player skill. But I personally think that is a very much a winnable game. The next one, though, is more of a problem. So, Dark Angels player, if they were going kind of just Dark Angels sort of style, it's not great. But when you were like mixing it with like the Gladius and, like some of these top players out there, like my friend Toby, who is one of the top Dark Angels player at the minute, knocking around with all of those Deathwing Knights that are -1 damage and just really resilient with four wounds. Adeptus Custodes is predominantly 2 damage, so he's putting us down to 1. We have to get an obscene amount of damage through to wipe a unit. So I'm surprised at this win percentage. I thought that would be larger. There'd probably be more like we lose 60% of the time, not 53% of the time. So we have a 47% win rate into Dark Angels. Admech, they've been slowly creeping up and getting better. And I've got a friend in Black Crow who has been doing amazing with them. He's been stalwart with them since the very beginning. And he loves the new changes that have come for him. They're cheap, their rules are better, and they hit hard. And I think this is now showing in the percentages. And as you can see, we lose quite regularly into them. Black Templars. Now, this surprised me because Black Templars have Fight on Death coming out the wazoo. They have those big blobs of 20, and that can really hurt. However, and you can give them these Fight first into Custodes, and Fight on Death is super strong when you're going combat v combat. So the fact that we only lose 52% of the time into Black Templars, it's pretty good. But actually, you know what? 48%, it's very close, isn't it? Like, I'm surprised by that. This next one has absolutely shook me because Sisters are very much one of the tippy-toppy armies to play at the minute. They're extremely strong, and yet it's almost a 50%, like 49%. We've got a 49% win rate into Sisters. That shocks me. Maybe it's because when we get into them that we can really put the hurt on them, but they're so fast now and they do so much damage. I was really surprised by that. Right, going into our best matchups. The best matchups are considerably smaller, as you can see. 50% of the time we beat Death Guard, and 50% of the time we lose to Death Guard. And I'm not surprised by that. Death Guard have got Fight first, but they are incredibly slow. So we have the opportunity to score big on points, which they struggle with. We have ways to do the damage to them. So I was quite surprised. But again, I think that's probably fair. Best matchup into Imperial Knights. We've got a 51% win rate into Imperial Knights, baby. And I can completely get it. Like, the Knights are still not amazing. Like, they got way better being able to just walk through stuff. Just walk through it. And they should be able to just, like, walk through walls. Like, who cares? It's a big, massive, titanous model. It should be able to just go through stuff. So us beating them 51% of the time, I think that is literally because a single custodian brick could probably kill an Imperial Knight quite easily, because Imperial Knights just don't have that invulnerable save in combat. So when you get to them, you hurt them, and the good custodian players, we can hide and we can bounce from cover to cover and stage and do all of those good things. That's why I think that win percentage is the way it is. World Eaters have surprised me. World Eaters are doing really well at the minute. They're really hot. They're so fast. They're so oppressive. I think for World Eaters, it's very much a case of if they get first turn, we hold back slightly, they're then in trouble, because we can just like multi-charge them, and they can't do like Fight on Death on every unit, so it could be pretty bleak for them. But likewise, if they hit us first, we're in danger. The Space Wolf matchup, I'm unsure about this percentage. but I think it's probably accurate on the level of Spaceful players that are. Again, this all comes down to player skill, right? Wolf Jail is a thing now. If you haven't heard of Wolf Jail, just basically you're just being penned in by these guys, and then they've got all of these dreadnoughts that are very good just walking in and giving us the hurt. So us winning 52% of the time is pretty good. Vanilla Marines, our win percentage of 54%, I thought would be higher. Vanilla Marines are really struggling, simply because their general units are good, but what makes Marines really good are these specialized units that people have access to. So when you just take the vanilla on their own, they kind of lack a bit of flavor, and that'll be why. Who likes vanilla, right? I'm personally more of a chocolate fan, but other people might love vanilla. Let me know. Put it in the comments. Are you a chocolate or a vanilla fan? Tell me. I want to know. Next one, Orcs. Orcs have had a real fall from grace since the latest points update. They got nerfed really hard. In fact, they got nerfed so hard that they're now really suffering. And it's one of the classic chef kiss of a GW moment. They release a codex, it's really oppressive, and they do one of two things. They either nuke it to the ground or they do nothing. And for these poor chaps, they got nuked pretty hard. And that way we now have a 63% win rate into Orcs, and that is very high. There was a lot of good Orc players still out there, and to have a 63% win rate into them, that's strong. So as Custodes players, I think you can still go into that matchup confident, simply because of how badly they were hurt. They really, they took it. Chaos Knights, 64%. Now, you would have thought it would have been similar to the Imperial Knights, but no. The reason that is because Chaos Knights just don't have as good a rules set as Imperial Knights. And again, it's one of those where the War Dog list will only get you so far. To be honest with you. And that's the long short of it. Next, we've got GSC. GSC are funny ones because Innes Wilson recently took GSC to a super major and he smashed it. Won the whole thing, did this amazing thing. But I think GSC's representation at an event is very low. And I think the people who are representing them aren't the type of players who are necessarily at Innes's caliber. And so that's why there's a 71% win rate for Adeptus Custodes, because as soon as you get into them, you kill them and hopefully they're not coming back. Don't get me wrong, there was a period where GSC was a horrible matchup for us. But now, apparently, it is our best matchup. 71% win rate into GSC. That is wild. But, this is what it is. So, you'll probably notice I didn't include Imperial Agents on there. It's because there's no data at the minute. Once that data comes out, maybe I'll do another one of these in like 6 months' time, and we'll go from there. But this is all for my community. So the Adeptus Custodes Discord, which I set up, is a growing community of some of the best Adeptus Custodes players in the world. We have people from America, we have people from the UK, Europe, and we're all collaborating to try and make this a really good community. And they just tell me what they want me to find out for them, and I go off and I try and get it and present it in the best way that I can in my spare bedroom with my headset. And I hope you guys have enjoyed it. And I'm going to keep doing these, keep throwing things at the wall, and eventually one of them will stick. But anyway, I want to say a massive thank you for again watching this video. And if you've got time, I'd love it if you went and watched our battle reports, our podcast, our Dark Angels videos that have been going up the series, the World Eater series that have been going up. We've got more content coming in the future. And if you like what you see, please just do us a massive favor, like, subscribe, and hit that bell notification. I've been Aaron. Thank you very much for watching, guys.